One of the biggest questions I get is this: can healing actually change what we're attracted to? If we do the work, if we address our childhood wounds and we shift the attachment patterns we come preloaded with from these early years, does that mean that we can change the people that we're naturally drawn to? This question is deeply relevant to early life trauma, to limerence, and to the relational patterns that come out of those early wounds. And this is not a new conversation. It's a conversation I've had with my best friend since we discovered boys. And it's a conversation I've had with complete strangers many, many times over since starting this channel. It's one that many of us will have throughout our lives. It's a frustrating question, this question of attraction, because what we're really asking with this question is, are we just fighting against what we actually want? And how much longer do we have to fight against ourselves in this way? How long do we have to keep pushing back against our own instinctual attraction, our own urge to connect with the kinds of people we've learned are not exactly good for us? Or does it eventually get easier? Do we reach a point where we don't have to fight so hard, where we can naturally want to love the right people and want to be loved by those people in turn? Hi, I'm Madalena, and this is You Reclaimed. Around here, we spend a lot of time talking about how we reclaim our lives back from the grips of childhood trauma, from emotional dysregulation, and from anxiety. And we do this ongoing exercise because we want to live our lives on our own terms. I hope you stick around. Before we get into it, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any future videos. And if you're finding this content helpful, please give it a like. It really helps the channel grow. Attraction is complex. It's not just about looks or even about personality. It's visceral, it's instinctual, and it's rooted in a mix of biology, of psychology, and all the experiences we've had since we were children. As an example, one of the patterns I see especially often in women who grew up with, let's say, less than perfect, solid father figures. This pattern goes something like this. There's a very strong pull toward men who project the kind of shiny, masculine, dominant, take care of you energy. Because at first glance, those kinds of men give the impression of solidity, of stability, and of strength. Most of all, they give the impression of protection. That's what's underneath it. They come across as someone who can protect you and create a sort of container around you of safety and stability. And when we're lacking the childhood experience of this particular kind of male energy, that lack tends to stay with us throughout our life. Unfortunately, projected masculinity is a quick and easy disguise, but it's not the same as real stability. Outward confidence and charisma and boldness even are not the same as inner strength and even emotional stability. And what looks solid at first glance can prove to be just a facade. So that many men who show a hyper-masculine, I'll take care of you kind of image on the outside can be on the inside just as lost and wounded as anyone else. But this pattern is very common because when we're wounded ourselves, it's easy to mistake that type of performative masculinity for actual character and reliability and emotional maturity. And when that happens, we end up choosing the wrong people, often over and over again. This is just one example of how attraction gets wired by our early experiences, and how it can sort of mislead us if we don't stop and look deeper beyond the first layer of attraction. Now, if you've been here on this channel for a while, you already know that early relationships wire us toward familiar dynamics. And when childhood isn't emotionally safe, those familiar dynamics usually aren't healthy ones. And that's why so many of us end up being pulled toward people who are narcissistic or avoidant on the the very exaggerated end of the spectrum of attachment, or emotionally unstable or chaotic, because they reflect what we experienced growing up. The problem isn't that we don't know these patterns exist. Most of us are aware. The real problem is not knowing how to steer ourselves in a different direction. And that's what healing actually looks like. Healing is not about changing who we find attractive. It's about learning to separate attraction from what we actually want to engage with in a relationship. It's about spotting the red flags sooner and then choosing not to follow them down the same familiar road. If you want to go deeper into this topic, I have another video called Why You're Attracted to Emotionally Unavailable People and How to Finally Stop, which is the most important part. That one will sort of walk you through the kinds of patterns that show up when people are emotionally unavailable, so you can spot these patterns and start breaking them. So here's the key thing. Healing doesn't really change who you're attracted to. Changing that is very difficult because attraction itself is instinctual and deeply rooted. I think a lot of us expect that one day we'll suddenly be attracted to the good kinds of people that we want to engage in a relationship with. And when that never comes, we're so disappointed and we think, well, there must be something wrong with me. I have to keep dating the wrong people, the people who end up toxic, the people who I obviously can't create healthy relationships with. But waiting to be attracted to the right kinds of people, a lot of the time it just keeps us stuck in place. What healing does change is how you can respond to your instinctual attraction, whether you indulge in who you're attracted to, or whether you stop yourself from going down a road that you already know leads to a lot of wasted time and perhaps to a lot of pain. And going down the road can be maybe meeting someone who seems exciting and who we have a lot of chemistry with, but we notice that we don't really feel comfortable. We're not comfortable revealing who we are. We're not comfortable being our real self around this person. And we always sense instinctually that maybe this person doesn't genuinely like us for who we are. Perhaps the person is critical, or maybe they're a bit dismissive. They don't show genuine interest in our stories, in our conversations, in our jokes. And an old version of us might go after this kind of person anyway, because the spark of attraction can be so intoxicating. But a healed version of you can meet a person like this and create a pause, a real pause between attraction and actually throwing yourself into this dynamic, which means that you can stop and consider, is this a path I want to take? And you can say to yourself, okay, this is the same pattern I've been in before. I don't actually need to go through this to find out where it's going, what's at the end of it. It's not a mystery. I already know. I know where this is going, and I can stop here and say, no thanks. Something else can come along that is better. Same with meeting people who are emotionally unavailable or emotionally inconsistent. People who are maybe inconsistent about making plans with us, about following through, about showing up on dates, or just being emotionally responsive. That's a big, big requirement that we tend to let go of. That sort of pattern where someone is messaging constantly, really engaged, but they alternate all of that attention with going cold or acting distant or pulling away or playing games, basically. This is the kind of dynamic that when you're unhealed or unconscious of what you're really choosing in love, you might mistake for a lot of passion or for mystery, because it traps you in this constant, do they like me or don't they? And that guessing game creates a kind of thrill that looks like attraction. But healing lets you see it differently. What's happening doesn't change, only your understanding and your perception of it changes. And that's enough. From a conscious place, you can look at these types of connections in a much more detached and cool way and see that this detective work I'm doing trying to figure out if a person likes me, if they want to make plans with me, if they want to stay close to me, this kind of work and effort is not actually attractive. There is nothing attractive about someone who makes me guess about their level of interest or involvement. In fact, that kind of inconsistency is deeply unattractive when you're able to recognize it as the waste of time and energy that it actually is. And on the flip side, healing also means making space for different choices. And I'll tell you very straightforwardly, I would never tell you to be with someone that you're not attracted to. Attraction matters. It matters for affection, for intimacy, for building a life together. And because attraction is part of sexual compatibility, only you can decide how important that is to you and how big of a role it needs to play in your life and in your relationships. But instead of only focusing on the intoxicating spark and the mystery of early dating, being very conscious of the way you choose partners and of who you're attracted to, it gives you the chance to give space to a grounded person who is actually stable and consistent. And sometimes, yes, it means that the chemistry doesn't feel as incredible at first, but if you're comfortable being yourself, if you're comfortable revealing your real character, if you feel seen by a person, if you feel safe in their presence, it is worth exploring. Go on that second date. See how it feels over 2 weeks, 1 month of regular dating. You don't have to spend 6 months or a year forcing yourself to wait and see if you're attracted to someone. But if there is a base level of attraction, you can give it a few dates if everything other than intense attraction is there. That is a perfectly valid choice. Intense magnetic attraction is tricky. A few of you have sent me very interesting stories about your own experiences with this kind of irresistible attraction. But when we're intensely drawn to someone, I don't want to say all the time, but I do want to say that the vast majority of the time, it's because something very deep and unconscious is being triggered. And if those kinds of connections all lead to bad outcomes for us, then we can safely assume that even without figuring out what the deep unconscious thing is that's being triggered, it's not a road that leads to good things for us. Sometimes strong attraction can grow slowly. And when it grows on a foundation of respect and comfort and genuine compatibility, it can become quite powerful and a lot more beneficial to a long-term relationship than that sort of instant chemistry that burns hot like a fire from the beginning. Chemistry that, we don't like to talk about this part, but chemistry that is ruined when our poor choices become obvious through the person's show of not so great character, or the kind of behavior we mistake for love when we are unconscious. And I say poor choices because if they are patterns, at some point we have to recognize that it's not just the person coming in with their own poor behavior. Part of it is our own choice to participate in engaging in this kind of connection. So here's where I want to leave you on this. Mature attraction, the kind that actually builds a real life with someone, is rooted in compatibility, in lifestyle fit, in emotional safety with another person. Instant hot chemistry that doesn't include feeling good emotionally beside another person, a lot of the time it turns into complete garbage. The things we feel pulled toward in the very beginning of dating often are not the same things that make a relationship work long term. Chemistry and intensity can feel amazing at first, but they don't often translate into the kind of partnership that sustains you and that makes a shared life good and positive. Because they're two separate things. It's not to say that they can't coexist in the same person, but you can't ignore one for the other. That's not a choice that ends well. Seldom. What healing actually does is it gives you the mental space to recognize that difference. It allows you to pause between what you instinctively find attractive right now in this moment and what you actually want to commit your time and your energy to. It lets you ask, is this really the person I want to spend my time, my energy, and my life with? And you have to ask yourself these questions because the quality of your closest relationships will absolutely define and flavor the quality of your entire life. And when you can see that clearly, you're able to lean into a more mature part of yourself, the part that wants respect and real companionship. Even if the initial spark isn't as explosive as the connection that burns hot and dies fast. Real attraction, the kind that deepens over time through shared experience, is built on something sturdier. And when you give yourself the chance to choose that, you're no longer really fighting against yourself. I think we feel like that a lot. You're choosing to allow yourself to move toward love that feels good long term and that lasts. As always, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use it. It really helps this channel grow. Until next time.